Change is constant. Change is also inevitable. And with the auto industry moving towards going fully electric by the end of the decade, change is coming fast. And if you're the in-house tuning brand of one of the world's leading luxury car makers, like AMG is, that change is coming very, very fast. This is the AMG EQS 53. It's the first electric car to come out of Autoback. And obviously there's a lot of hope riding on it because this previews that change. We're going to see what it's like. While the EQS 53 lacks some of the visual drama usually associated with AMGs, you know, the flared wheel arches, the power domes on the hood, and of course quad exhaust pipe, it's got plenty of presence. The EQS is a large sedan at 5.2 meter long on a 3.2 meter long wheelbase, so there really isn't escaping how much space it takes up on the road. Still, 21-inch wheels fill up the arches well enough, and the selenite grey paint add menace, if only in small doses. From behind the wheel of the EQS 53, does it feel like an AMG? Well, the quick answer is yes, it does, but it also feels like a very modern AMG because though the seat lets you get quite low in the car, the hyperscreen takes up quite a bit of real estate. It feels like a bottom third or a little more of a bottom third of your vision is just taken up by all that massive screen real estate. You can fix that by moving your seat a little higher up so you get a better view out the car, but then you lose some of that connect with the car, and being an EV, that connect is already in short supply. Now what I mean by that is that in any AMG, you get in and when you press that starter button, the 6-cylinder or the V8, whatever the case may be, it roars to life. And in the EQS 53, you do get a synthesized sound, but it's obviously not quite the same thing. Now when you get rolling, this thick rim steering wheel plus the AMG in front of you, it all gives you hints that you're in an AMG, albeit a big heavy AMG. Now the closest comparison that I can think of would be something like the GT4, the GT63, and that car is a whole different beast. Obviously it's got that bi-turbo V8, but it's also a lot more hardcore, and what I'm really missing is that center console that's sort of laid out to remind you of the banks of a V8. This though, there's a lot more space here. But from behind the wheel, especially when you set the instrumentation in one of its more futuristic modes, it really makes you feel like you're pretty much in the next decade instead of this. And I suppose that's what the EQS 53 is trying to show us. What performance motoring is going to look like 10 years from now. Check out our walk-around video for more details. Let's get on to the heart of things. While the EQS 53 is based on the EQS 580, also coming to India, its twin electric motors, one on each axle, have been tuned by AMG. And one by one, man? I sure hope so. All India cars come with the Dynamic Plus pack as standard, which pumps power up to 761 PS and 1020 Nm of torque, available for a short time when the race start launch is activated. Claimed 0 to 100 kmph is 3.4 seconds, and we managed 3.6 on a hot day. AMG has also upped the cooling since heat is the real enemy of an EV. With a 107.8 kWh battery, the 586 km WLTP range is the real talking figure. We estimate close to 500 km in the real world, though driving it like an AMG should be, can still probably get you well over 350 km. Mercedes is setting up 180 kW ultra-fast DC chargers across its network, and the EQS can charge at up to 200 kW. Of course, a big concern with an electric AMG is whether it still has that emotion, and the quick answer is no, not quite. It doesn't have all that sound, it doesn't have all that fury, it doesn't have all that anger when you put your foot down, but it does have all that speed and more. In fact, the duality of the nature of this AMG is even more pronounced just by how silent and comfortable it is when you're just driving around. So when you're just pottering around in the city, things like the ability to raise the suspension to not ground out makes a big difference. The rear wheel steer makes a huge difference, allowing this 5.2 meter long car with a 3.2 meter long wheelbase to essentially turn on a dime. Now, to really experience the duality of the EQS 53 that we were talking about, you do have to change drive modes, because when you put it in Sport or Sport Plus, it changes that synthesized sound that's piped into the cabin, and that makes a huge difference. While this is a top tier AMG, the drive modes top out at Sport Plus. There is no race here, I think mainly by virtue of the fact that you're getting everything at max in any case. That said, Sport Plus is still the mode that you want to be in if you want to get the feel of an AMG from this EQS 53. It just sharpens everything up, and that synthesized sound definitely earns its keep. Because when you do put it in Sport Plus and you put your foot down, you get that anger, you get that fury. It almost feels like a full AMG. The build-up of pace is rapid, and it does it so silently. This could be your stealth vehicle. You even hear that slight wobbling when you're stopped at idle, and it plays inside the car and outside it. So when you step out and the car's still idling, you hear it, and it does make you feel like you're standing next to something special. Not quite an AMG, but hey, like we said, we've got to embrace the change. While something like the EQS 580 is entirely capable of giving you those thrills of just mashing your foot down and getting pinned back in your seat, I think what the AMG brings to the table is that extra drama, that extra feeling of tightness, because you get this in any other AMG. It's just that you don't get the feeling of those vibrations coming through the engine, that connection between the throttle pedal and your change of pace, that's a little subdued. But when you put your foot down, I think the EQS 53 is a lot more than just a one-trick pony. Thankfully, the EQS 53 isn't just exciting in a straight line. When you put it in Sport Plus, you get that nice AMG feel from it. And when you get to a set of corners, boy, you better be ready to point and shoot. So when you get to a set of twisties, you do feel like you have to muscle the car around a little bit. You do start to feel all of that 2.7 tons of weight that this thing is carrying around. But it's precise, and it's got a lot of grip. You do have a little bit of weight management to take care of, but then again, your throttle response is so instantaneous, you've just got to get the car turned in, and when you put your foot back down on the throttle, it feels like it shoots straight back up to where you left off, and that's a full throttle. Man! You actually need a little bit of calibration of your driving reflexes, because you have to be very metered with your throttle foot, or you'll end up upsetting the balance of the car. It's worth noting that AMG has tuned the air suspension and even have their own bespoke suspension components in there, like the rear subframe for one, but all of that doesn't result in a typically stiff AMG ride. Over really bad patches, I do find myself appreciating the extra comfort that this particular AMG brings to the table. I don't think I've driven an AMG this compliant before. At the same time, when you do start pushing it, you do have Sport Plus to fall back on. Just kind of pick up some of that slop that you might feel if you're pushing it in comfort. And once again, duality, the AMG special. There's another thing that will take some getting used to. In an AMG, you expect those big carbon ceramic brakes with massive stopping power and bite. But in the 53, you have to recalibrate yourself a little bit, because the brakes are working on friction and regen at the same time. So there's not as much bite as you might like initially, but you do push further down on the pedal and then you get that stopping power, and it is quite impressive once you do that. There are 3 levels of regen braking to choose from via the paddle shifters, with one pedal driving possible in its strongest setting. When you're driving the EQS a little quickly, I think most people would prefer to just leave it in its normal recuperation mode, because the strong recuperation actually ends up being a little too strong. It feels like you're fighting the drivetrain at times. Now, some of you might be questioning the logic of AMG really showcasing its prowess in an electric car like the EQS. Maybe the first electric car should have been something smaller, a little more agile. But here's my take on this. If they can make a car like the EQS handle this nicely, I'm sure they can make anything with a set of batteries in it handle really well. Ultimately, an AMG is about the drama of the entire drive experience, which the EQS 53 only provides in its sportiest of drive modes. While some may feel shortchanged, there's no denying that if speed is your primary reason to buy an AMG, the EQS 53 more than delivers. In fact, it shocks and leaves you in awe. If we have to embrace the change of performance motoring, I can't see a better way to do it than in this.